The dust motes danced in the slivers of sunlight piercing the grimy attic window. Clara Hayes, 28, sharp, determined, with a quiet intensity in her eyes, knelt amidst cardboard boxes, each a time capsule of a life lived before her. The air hung heavy with the scent of aged paper and forgotten dreams. Her grandmother, Eleanor, 80s, frail, but with eyes that still held a spark of defiance, had passed a month ago, leaving Clara with the bittersweet task of sorting through decades of memories. Eleanor had rarely spoken of her husband, Major Arthur Vance, listed as presumed dead, in Vietnam. It was a wound that never truly healed, a silence that permeated their small New England home. Clara knew the official story, the one etched into granite walls and whispered in hushed tones. MIA, 1971. Just another casualty of a war that had swallowed so many. Clara pulled out a heavy, unassuming box, its label faded but legible. Arthur. Letters and mementos. Her heart gave a familiar pang. This was it, the box Eleanor always kept on the highest shelf, untouched. Inside, a cascade of yellowed letters, brittle newspaper clippings, and a handful of black and white photographs. Each item was a fragile echo of a man she never knew, yet whose absence shaped her family. She picked up a photograph, a small sepia-tone print. Her grandfather, Major Arthur Vance, young, impossibly handsome in his crisp uniform, a slight, almost shy smile playing on his lips. His eyes, though, held a distant, knowing look, as if he'd already seen too much. He stood by a Huey helicopter, jungle foliage blurring in the background. It was a common military photo, hundreds like it in countless family albums. Clara traced the outline of his face with her thumb. She'd seen this photo 1,000 times, framed in her grandmother's living room, but something about holding the original, feeling the subtle texture of the old paper, made her inspect it closer. She flicked it over, expecting to see a date, a name, perhaps a loving message from Arthur to Eleanor. Nothing. No date, no message, just the slight yellowing of age. But then, catching the faint attic light was something else. A tiny, almost invisible mark. Not a pen stroke, not a stain. It was carved, etched with something sharp, right into the emulsion of the print. A minuscule, almost perfect circle, no bigger than a pinprick, with a single, even more microscopic dash inside it. It was positioned precisely at the bottom right corner, barely visible unless you knew to look. Clara squinted, her brow furrowed. What was this? It was too deliberate to be accidental, too precise for a random scratch. A shiver traced down her spine. Eleanor had held on to this box for decades, never mentioning this mark. Could it mean something? This tiny, almost invisible imperfection suddenly felt monumental. It was a whisper from the past, challenging the very bedrock of her family's grief. Presumed dead, they called it. But some truths, Clara was about to discover, refused to stay buried. This tiny mark would shatter everything her family thought they knew about his fate. Days later, Clara's small apartment was consumed by the mystery. Books on Vietnam history, military codes, and MIA investigations littered her coffee table. The photograph, now encased in a protective sleeve, was her focal point. She had tried magnifying the mark, drawing it, even searching online for similar insignias. Nothing. It was unique, or perhaps too obscure. A soft, melancholic melody plays. Eleanor, her back to Clara, sits by the window, gazing at a framed photo. The same photo. She gently touches the glass, a sigh escaping her lips. Clara, younger, approaches. Grandma, are you sad about Grandpa? Eleanor, voice soft, distant. Some things, my dear, are not meant to be found, only remembered. The memory faded. Clara frowned. Her grandmother's words, "not meant to be found," suddenly took on a sinister new meaning. Was Eleanor protecting a secret, or was she simply too burdened by it to speak? Clara knew her grandfather was a decorated soldier, a major in army intelligence. His disappearance was always shrouded in an unusual silence, even by MIA standards. No prisoner reports, no confirmed last known location, just a vague, lost in transit after a deep reconnaissance mission in Laos. Clara, on the phone, looking frustrated, hanging up. Sound of busy signal, then click. Clara at a computer, scrolling through digitized military archives. Redacted documents flash on screen, sound of frantic typing. Clara visits a local veterans hall, talking to an older, weary veteran who shakes his head, sound of hushed, discouraging conversation. Clara hit a bureaucratic wall. The National Archives were a labyrinth of procedure and dismissive attitudes. Every request for Arthur Vance's full file met with the same cold response: declassified but heavily redacted, all relevant information available online. The online versions were useless, black bars obscuring entire paragraphs, names, and locations. When she pressed, a stern archivist, Mr. Jenkins, 50s buttoned-up board, simply reiterated, "Ma'am, Major Vance's case is closed." He was presumed lost, a regrettable but common outcome of that particular conflict. Clara pointed to the tiny mark on the photograph. This isn't common, it's a code." Jenkins barely glanced at it. "Likely a manufacturing defect, or wear and tear. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have other patrons." Clara felt a knot of frustration tighten in her stomach. They weren't just unhelpful, they were actively discouraging. It was as if a silent force field protected Arthur Vance's file, keeping anyone from digging too deep. Discouraged, but not defeated, Clara nursed a lukewarm coffee. The official channels were dead ends. She needed a new angle, something unofficial. She remembered an obscure online forum dedicated to unsolved military disappearances, a place filled with theories and the occasional desperate plea from family members. She had dismissed it as a conspiracy theorist's haven, but now it felt like her only lead. She posted the photo, blurring her grandfather's face but highlighting the mysterious mark. "Does anyone recognize this symbol? My grandfather, MIA, Vietnam." The replies were initially what she expected: condolences, dead ends, wild theories. But then one message stood out, from a user named Ghostwalker73. "That mark, I've seen it before. Not in official records. Try the Echoes of Laos subforum and ask for Silas. He might still be around." Clara navigated to the suggested subforum. It was smaller, even more obscure. She found Silas. His profile picture was a faded black and white photo of a young man with a grim, determined face, a soldier. His bio simply read, "Remembering those who didn't come home, and some who did but were never seen again." Clara sent him a private message, attaching the photo. "My grandfather, Major Arthur Vance, MIA, 71. This mark, you know it?" The reply came almost instantly, startling her awake. "Meet me, tomorrow, 0900, Old Diner on Elm Street. Come alone. Don't tell anyone." No pleasantries, no questions, just a demand. Clara's heart pounded. This was it, a real lead, but also a leap into the unknown. The diner smelled of stale coffee and burnt bacon. Silas sat in a booth in the back, obscured by shadows. He was an older man, probably in his late 70s, with a weathered face that looked like it had seen too many sunrises in too many unforgiving places. His eyes, though, were sharp and clear, missing nothing. He wore a simple denim jacket, a faded baseball cap, and carried himself with an almost military precision despite his age. He didn't greet her. He just pointed to the opposite seat. "The photo. Let me see it." Clara slid it across the table. Silas picked it up, turning it over slowly. His thumb hovered over the tiny mark. A flicker of recognition, then something darker, almost painful, crossed his face. Silas, voice gruff, low. Where did you get this? Clara. My grandmother's attic. It was my grandfather's. Major Arthur Vance. Silas put the photo down gently, his gaze fixed on Clara. Silas. Arthur Vance. I knew him. Or I knew of him. He was a ghost before he became one. Clara. What do you mean? Silas. That mark. It's not a code, not in the way you think. It's a signature of a unit, a very, very specific unit, and they didn't officially exist. Silas leaned back, taking a slow sip of his coffee. Silas. Arthur was part of a Black Ops detachment, call sign Phoenix Echo. Their mission was unconventional. Deep insertion, intelligence gathering, disrupting supply lines. But more than that, they were tasked with identifying key personnel on the enemy side that could be turned or removed without a trace. A ghost squad, working entirely off-grid. Clara. And the mark? Silas. It was their way of verifying contact, or leaving a breadcrumb for a recovery team if things went completely sideways. No paper trail, no radio. Just a hidden symbol in a prearranged location. If you found it, it meant either the mission was compromised or it was completed successfully, and the operator had gone dark.
Dark? You mean they went underground?
Sometimes they stayed. Sometimes they simply ceased to exist. Officially, it depended on the mission. Arthur was on a particularly sensitive one in Laos. Something about a rogue general and a hidden cache of chemical weapons. They needed someone with his unique skill set, a linguist, a tracker, and a master of infiltration. He was the best. So, he wasn't killed? He wasn't captured? Silas looked her dead in the eye. No, Arthur Vance wasn't lost. He was left. And then he vanished. Not by enemy fire, by design. Silas's words echoed in Clara's mind, shattering decades of official narrative. Arthur wasn't a victim, he was a phantom. The knowledge was a heavy weight, but also a surge of fierce determination. She had a new mission, to uncover the truth behind Phoenix Echo and her grandfather's disappearance. Silas gave her a small, worn notebook. These are names, rumors, places, people who might know something. Most are dead, some are broken. But if anyone can tell you what happened to Arthur, it's one of them. Be careful. The shadows of that war stretch further than you think. Clara travels. A shot of her in an old motel room surrounded by maps and documents. She visits a quiet, isolated town, knocking on a door of a rundown house. A brief, tense conversation with an older, paranoid man who slams the door in her face. Clara researching in a dimly lit library, poring over microfiche of old newspapers. Clara tracked down an aging veteran named Jake Slingshot Reed, one of the names from Silas's notebook. Jake lived in a dilapidated warehouse in rural Arkansas, a shadow of his former self, haunted by ghosts of a war no one understood. He was hesitant, his eyes darting nervously, but the mention of Arthur Vance and the tiny symbol on the photo finally broke through his fear. Jake, voice raspy, filled with regret. Phoenix Echo, God help us. We were disposable, all of us. Arthur, he knew too much. Jake recounted fragments of a terrifying truth. Major Vance's last mission was not about chemical weapons. It was about intercepting a defecting scientist who held secrets about an experimental bioweapon developed by the very people Arthur was supposed to be working with. Jake, they found out he was trying to expose it. He was going to leak intel. The brass, they couldn't have that, not with the political climate. So they set him up, a fake extraction point, and when he went for it, they just let him go, disappeared him, made sure he was never seen again. Jake pulled out an old, faded map covered in cryptic markings. Arthur, he knew it was coming. He left a trail, breadcrumbs for if anyone ever came looking. This map, it's supposed to lead to a final message, a contingency. He was always one step ahead, even of them. The revelation of the bioweapon and the deliberate abandonment of her grandfather filled Clara with a cold fury. It wasn't just a secret, it was a betrayal, a systematic erasure of a loyal soldier because he dared to uphold a moral code that transcended orders. The mark on the photo wasn't just a unit signature, it was a warning, a desperate signal left by a man who knew he was being sacrificed. Clara, now driven by an almost obsessive need for proof, located a retired professor of Cold War history, Dr. Anna Chen, 60s, sharp, analytical, who had published controversial papers on covert operations in Southeast Asia. Dr. Chen, initially skeptical, became intrigued by Clara's evidence, especially the consistent pattern of redactions in Arthur Vance's file and the unusual Phoenix Echo designation. Dr. Chen, this is a ghost operation, all right? The kind they scrub from existence. But the existence of that bioweapon, that's a deep state secret. You're treading on dangerous ground, young lady. They don't like old wounds reopened. Clara, my grandfather wasn't just a wound. He was a man, and he deserves to be known. Clara painstakingly followed Jake's map. It led her not to a location, but to a sequence of seemingly random numbers and dates, scrawled on the back of an old, unused train ticket found in a forgotten storage locker. The numbers combined with the dates seemed meaningless until she remembered something Silas had said. Arthur was a linguist, and then a fleeting memory of her grandmother humming a forgotten lullaby. The lullaby was one her grandmother had sung to her, a nonsense rhyme in an obscure dialect. Clara, desperate, input the numbers into an old online translator, cross-referencing with the unique phonetic structure of the dialect. It was a long shot, but then a word appeared, a place name, a remote, forgotten village in the mountains of North Carolina, a village not on any modern map. The drive was long, the roads dwindling to dirt tracks, then finally to nothing but a faint trail. The forest was thick, ancient, swallowing the sunlight. Following a crude, hand-drawn sketch from Jake, Clara hiked for hours, the humid air heavy around her. Doubt gnawed at her, but something primal pushed her forward. Then, through a break in the trees, she saw it, a small weathered cabin, almost swallowed by the wilderness. Smoke curled lazily from its chimney. It looked abandoned, yet there was a stillness about it, a sense of occupancy. Her heart pounded. This was it, the final destination. Clara approached cautiously, her hand trembling as she raised it to knock. The door creaked open before she could touch it. Standing in the doorway was an old man. His hair was long, silver, pulled back into a simple tie. His face was deeply lined, etched by years of sun and silence. His eyes, though, were piercingly clear, intelligent, and held that same distant, knowing look she'd seen in the photograph. He wasn't wearing a uniform. He wore simple, functional clothes, but the way he stood, the quiet alertness in his posture, was unmistakable. It was the bearing of a soldier. He looked at her, not with surprise, but with a profound, weary recognition. Old man. "You took your time, little one." Clara, voice choked. "Grandfather? Arthur Vance?" He gave a slow, gentle nod. The ghost. Not of a man lost to war, but of a man lost to history. Arthur Vance. Alive. He had lived in this remote cabin for decades, a self-imposed exile. He recounted a story of a desperate escape from Laos after realizing the true nature of his mission and the betrayal by his own command. He had carried critical intelligence not about chemical weapons, but about the bioweapon program being secretly run by a rogue element within his own government, using a remote testing site in the mountains of North Carolina. He couldn't go back. He knew too much. He couldn't expose it without causing an international incident and being silenced permanently. So he disappeared. Using his unique skills, he orchestrated his own MIA status, leaving behind the mark as a faint, desperate hope that if anyone ever truly looked, they might find him, or at least his truth. Arthur Vance. I couldn't risk revealing the truth while they were still active. Too many lives were at stake. I chose to be a phantom, to watch, to wait. I knew one day someone would find the thread. I hoped it would be you. He explained how he survived, building a life off-grid, maintaining a silent watch, occasionally passing anonymous intelligence to trusted independent journalists through intermediaries to ensure the program never fully resurfaced. He had sacrificed his identity, his family, his life to protect a greater good. The truth hit Clara with a profound force. Her grandfather wasn't just a hero who vanished. He was a silent guardian, still fighting a war no one knew existed. His disappearance was the ultimate act of service, a burden carried in solitude for half a century. The mark on the photo wasn't a cry for help. It was a testament to his unbreakable spirit, a hidden sign that he was still here, as his fellow silent warriors would say. Clara, why now? Why let me find you? Arthur Vance. The program, it's been dismantled. The key players are gone, and the world, it's a different place now. The truth in its own time needs to breathe. And I'm tired of holding my breath. He looked at her with a gentle smile, the first genuine warmth she'd seen. Arthur Vance, your grandmother Eleanor, she knew. Not everything, but enough to understand. She helped me create this new life. She kept my secret, knowing it was for something bigger than us. The reunion was bittersweet. Decades of lost time, questions that could never truly be answered. But in the quiet understanding between them, Clara felt a connection to her grandfather that was stronger than any she could have imagined. He wasn't the man in the photo anymore, but the spirit. The unwavering integrity was undeniable. He lived his lesson. True valor isn't about the medals you wear, but the burdens you carry in silence. Clara returned home, not with her grandfather, but with his story, a story that wouldn't be told in history books, but whispered among those who understood. She had found her answer. Arthur Vance was not dead. He was an unwritten chapter, a living testament to the sacrifices made in the shadows. She held the old photograph, its tiny mark now a beacon of hidden courage, not a symbol of loss. Clara Viover. They say war stories are about battles and bravery, but sometimes the greatest courage isn't on the front lines or even in the official reports. It's in the quiet resilience of those who choose to disappear, to protect secrets too dangerous for the light, carrying the weight of a nation's hidden truths. My grandfather, Arthur Vance, was one such man. He chose silence so others could have peace. He chose to be forgotten so the truth could remain buried until its time. And in doing so, he became the truest kind of hero, the one who never asked for recognition, only for understanding. The story of Major Arthur Vance is a fictional one, but it echoes the countless real sacrifices made in silence. Men and women who stepped into the shadows, whose legacies were erased for a greater good. It makes you wonder, doesn't it? What would you do if you discovered such a profound secret about your own family, a truth the government buried for decades? Would you seek justice, or would you honor the silence? Tell us in the comments below. We want to hear your thoughts. And if this story moved you, if it made you think about the true meaning of service and sacrifice, then please hit that subscribe button. Help us share more stories that matter, because some legends aren't written in history books. They're carried in the hearts of those who remember. Thank you for watching.